100,000 soldiers stood perfectly lined up, every one of them wrapped head to toe in polished silver armor. As the army marched forward, their voices rose together, shouting slogans about humanity's future, about fighting bravely and wiping out every last monster. Inside the city, the sight sent waves of excitement through the crowd. People cheered until their throats hurt, hearts swelling with confidence as they watched the knights move out. To most of them, this looked like the beginning of a sure win. But not everyone felt that way. An elderly woman stood quietly among the crowd, watching the shining formation slowly fade into the distance. Tears slipped down her face, heavy and bitter. In a low voice, she wondered if the gods were laughing at them. From her point of view, monsters killed to survive, and humans did the same when fighting monsters. The difference, she believed, was that monsters acted on instinct alone, while humans dressed their violence in ideals. She questioned whether the God who made this world had truly meant for things to turn out like this. It didn't have to be this way, yet somehow, it always ended up the same. In her mind, neither side was truly innocent, but neither was truly guilty either. That left one unsettling question hanging in the air. If no one was wrong, then who was really to blame? Far away from the cheering city, inside Linton's tribe, the atmosphere was anything but celebratory. The moment Linton ordered more weapons to be forged, the entire tribe snapped into motion. Goblins flooded deep into the great tomb, stripping iron ore from every vein they could find. Days passed in a blur of exhaustion and fire. By the end of it, every low-tier goblin had been outfitted with iron armor. The giant goblins were fully armed as well, and alongside the remaining monsters from the great tomb of Nazar, Linton's forces finally stood ready for war. Even so, something still weighed on him. Anise lingered in his thoughts, refusing to fade, no matter how prepared they were. That uneasy calm shattered when a goblin scout sprinted back from the front lines, breathless and tense. He reported that the Empire's forces had already reached the area near the Great Tomb and were holding their position about 30 li away. The distance made Linton pause. He remembered there was a relatively flat plain around that area. In his mind, it was obvious. They were planning to start the war there. He calmly ordered the scout to keep watching and report back with any changes. Once alone, Linton moved to a quiet spot and activated the life simulation system. A war on this scale was chaos waiting to happen. There were too many variables, too many powerful individuals capable of turning the tide on their own. One wrong decision could cost him everything. If he wanted even the smallest edge, he needed the system to help him correct mistakes before they became fatal. The system came online. It identified the current scenario as the Great War with the Empire. It reminded him that 300 days had passed since he'd been transmigrated into this world, and that this battle marked the most critical turning point he'd faced so far. The numbers spoke for themselves. His tribe consisted of 80,000 low-tier goblins, 30,000 large goblins, 8,000 goblin heroes, and 100 goblin chieftains. By any standard, it was the strongest goblin tribe history had ever seen. In the simulation, Linton led his massive army straight onto the battlefield while triggering a summoning skill at the same time. From the depths of the great tomb of Nazarich, 20,000 low-intelligence monsters poured out, thrown into the fight as expendable force. Even with numbers on his side, the moment he laid eyes on the Empire's formation, a heavy pressure settled over him. 100,000 fully armored soldiers stood waiting, and among them were 30,000 heavy cavalry, an overwhelming sight no matter how many troops he commanded. The war exploded the instant both sides clashed, their roars colliding before steel ever did. Almost immediately, reality turned cruel. The Empire's fully armored soldiers were far stronger than expected. Goblins fell in droves, faster than Linton could process. The casualty exchange spiraled into a brutal 5-to-1 ratio, and watching his forces get cut down at that pace felt unreal, even inside the simulation. Just as the situation threatened to spiral completely out of control, Demon King Veronica entered the battlefield. She unleashed a terrifyingly powerful skill, summoning grotesque black goats that stormed into the fight. For a brief moment the pressure eased. The casualty rate slowed, and it looked like the tide might finally stabilize. That hope didn't last long. Once the church committed its full strength, the battlefield shifted again, this time decisively. Linten realized too late that he had become the primary target. The Empire's elites and the church's top-tier powerhouses locked onto him at once. Attacks rained down in dense, overwhelming waves, leaving him nowhere to retreat. In the chaos, Gobu Kwang died trying to protect him. Alice was badly wounded, captured before she could escape. Linten himself couldn't break free. The simulation made it painfully clear. He had been trapped by fate, reduced to nothing more than a chess piece of the Great Tomb. The battle ended in disaster. Both sides suffered devastating losses, yet no one truly won. The system delivered its cold summary. In a world ruled by individuals with absurd levels of power, exposing himself so openly was no different from stepping straight into hell. The score settled at 40 points, granting 40 life points as a reward. The life simulation ended, and time advanced by 1 day. Linten snapped back to reality and forced himself to breathe, pushing down the fear that had crept across his face. He hadn't expected to die so easily, not even in a simulation. He was already level 90, with total combat power reaching 6,800. And yet, none of that had mattered. He still couldn't survive a single full-scale battle. The realization hit him hard, leaving his spirit shaken. After calming down, he began to understand why. The true strength of the church's elites had been impossible to judge accurately. Based on Demon King Veronica's performance alone, it was clear the old Pope's combat power was nearing 10,000, far beyond anything Linten could handle head-on. Unless he could seriously injure the Pope using blood destruction and weaken him first, killing him outright would be nearly impossible. That left only one option: an ambush. Linten understood now that revealing himself too early was a fatal mistake. He would need to stay hidden, let the Demon King summon even more monsters, and wait for the right moment. As the realization settled in, he sank into deep thought. From here on out, every step had to be taken with extreme caution. One wrong move, and next time, hell wouldn't just be a warning, it would be real. Deep inside the Great Tomb, a massive projection screen quietly replayed everything that had happened: scenes from the forest, movements within the Empire, every critical moment laid bare. The images were the result of a powerful spell jointly cast by 3 eyeless witches who shared a single eye between them. They were known as the Black Witches. Long ago, they had been human and loyal servants of the Church. That loyalty had earned them nothing but a curse. After crossing Demon King Veronica, they were twisted into their current grotesque forms. The lone eye they shared was called the Divine Eye, an artifact said to see everything, and even glimpse the future itself. As the scenes unfolded, Veronica watched with clear interest. A faint, amused smile curved her lips. From what she could tell, those goblins were about to throw the world into serious chaos. Turning her attention toward the Black Witches, she ordered them to predict how the coming war would end. The witches didn't dare hesitate. They lifted the eyeball and began chanting ancient, forgotten incantations. Almost immediately, something went wrong. Blood began to seep from the eye, and the pain hit them all at once. Their screams echoed through the tomb as they writhed in agony. Through clenched teeth, one of them managed to report that the Pope himself was involved in the battle. Because of that, they couldn't see the outcome clearly. Still, there was something else, something vague but terrifying, that one of the witches sensed before trailing off mid-sentence. That hesitation snapped what little patience remained. A sharp demand cut through the air, demanding to know exactly what they had seen. After a long, trembling pause, the witch finally answered. She said she had seen the birth of a new god. All 3 witches reacted instantly, their expressions exaggerated and distorted as they stretched their arms outward, as if worshipping something far beyond comprehension. The sight only darkened Veronica's mood. Her face hardened, and then she exploded in rage. She dismissed the vision as nonsense, declaring that if gods truly existed, she would have been dead long ago. With that, a surge of black demonic energy burst outward like a tidal wave, blasting the three witches away. Watching from the side, Obito couldn't help but mutter in awe that for a mere goblin to cause this kind of ripple, their lord truly was something else. Despite her disdain and dissatisfaction with Linten, she couldn't deny his capability deep down. Veronica, however, let out a cold snort. In her eyes, Linten was nothing more than a disposable pawn. She declared that it was time to settle things completely with both the Empire and the Church, and that preparations should begin at once. She ordered the release of that man. Just then, Obito sensed a teleportation formation activating. Realizing Linten was the one arriving, she quickly opened a corresponding teleportation channel on the Great Tomb side, allowing him to pass through safely. Linten slowly materialized before them. Obito forced a stiff smile and greeted him, asking whether he needed something. Linten didn't waste time on pleasantries. After a quick glance around, he got straight to the point. He explained that the situation was serious. The Empire's mind masters and the Church's forces had already set up camp near the outer edge of the Great Tomb, roughly 30 kilometers away. Veronica responded as if this were news to her, casually remarking that the war was about to begin and asking how he planned to handle it. While speaking, Linten quietly inspected her attribute panel. Demon King Veronica, Level 100, Undead. Class, Heretical Summoner. Titles included Hand of Heresy, Immortal Cain, and Dark Summoner. Her lifespan stretched over 3,800 years. Her strength and defense stats were high but not absurd, and her listed skills focused heavily on summoning and enhancement. Her equipment, Death Shroud and Staff of Darkness, completed the picture. Total combat power, 9,999. Looking at the raw numbers alone, she didn't seem overwhelmingly superior. In fact, her base stats weren't much higher than Linten's own. But that surface comparison was misleading. Her real threat came from her skills, her class, and her equipment working together. That combination made her terrifying in actual combat. Linten also remembered the system's warning, that she would later summon a black goat creature. It reinforced a truth he was beginning to understand. Every race had natural limits to its attributes, and only gods, or beings that surpassed normal racial boundaries, could break free of them entirely.